Good afternoon to all of you. Welcome to yet another session. So we are gathered here trying to go through, if you remember, trying to go through our CCNA-1. CCNA consists of 3 levels, and we are doing CCNA-1, Introduction to Networks. We have gone through the first 9 topics. Now we'll be going through the 10th one, Basic Router Configuration. If you look at the things that we have studied, okay, most of them are related to our Ethernet, to our LAN, including switching, okay, using switches. But now we are going into the domain of routers. So when you go into the domain of routers, you should know that you are going to connect 2 different networks to each other. When I say 2 different networks, I mean 2 networks that have different network address. The network address is not the same. So for that, you need this special device known as a router. Okay, so a router, I repeat, as I've repeated before, a router is used to connect 2 different networks together. Okay, and a switch connects the same network together. And both of them being intermediary devices, a router is much more precious because it's the exit and the entry device to your network. Okay, so we are going to start learning about the router. Okay, and then in the following lab, next week's lab, that is after the week 3, sorry, your lab exercise will be configuration of the router. The basic commands of a router are the same as the switch because both of them do use the iOS, okay, Internet Networking Operating System. But there are some things which are only relevant to a router. So let's get started. So today we'll go through the initial router settings, how to work with iOS operating system on a Cisco router. We will configure our interfaces. What are the interfaces that we have on a router? We will look at one of the topologies inside your slides and we will play around with it. Okay. We will also configure the default gateway. What is the default gateway? We'll be studying that as well. So let's start with configuring initial router settings. Just like your switch, your router has got a device name. It has got a user exec mode. In the user exec mode, that means when you switch on your router, you can mention what password you want it to have. Okay, so here would be your line console 0. If you want to access your router from a network, then you can give a telnet SSH password. Okay, line VT04. Okay, if you want all the passwords to be encrypted, then you can write service password encryption. If you want to give a legal notification, then you can do the banner message of the day message. Okay, and you can also save the changes by saying copy running configuration to startup configuration. Okay, now let's play around with some of these. Let me open my packet tracer. So you can see my packet tracer. I'll just take a 4331 router. Okay, this would be my router. Okay, I open this is the router. Okay, you see it's switched on. I can actually click here and it will switch off. Okay, but it's by default, when you take a router and put it on the stage, it gets switched on. And then you can go to the command line interface. Okay. There, here's my router. The first thing it says is the system configuration dialog. Would you like to enter the initial configuration dialog? Select no, just press N. Okay. And get started. Okay. So here we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to perhaps give a password for this. Okay. So enable conf t. You see the basic commands are just like your switch. Okay. And here we go. Host name R1. There it is. Okay. Now I'm going to give entry password line console 0. Okay. And I can say password is, let's say, Cisco. Okay. Usually this is the password we give. Okay. And that should do it. Okay. Exit, exit, exit. There. Now when I press enter, you see? Oops. I think I made a mistake. Enable, sorry. Conf T, again, line, console, 0. Okay. So, password, Cisco. Okay. Login. I forgot to mention this. Okay. Then exit, exit, sorry. Exit. There we are. Now, when I press again return, press the enter key. Now it asks me for a password. Remember the password I gave was Cisco. When you type your password, you cannot see the characters coming on. Okay, you cannot even see asterisks. That is extra security. So I've already typed Cisco. I press enter. So I go in. Okay, so this is your user exec. Okay, by giving the line console password. Okay, as we mentioned here, you see, you give the line console. This is allowing you entry. Okay. You can also, when you enter, if you want the banner, okay, if you want the banner message of the day, you can also play around with that, just like your switch. The same thing goes for your router. Okay, so again, enable conf t. Okay, so banner message of the day. Okay, and then put the message in your hash. The message is only authorized network admin allowed to use this router. Okay, so we can leave a message like that. Okay, and okay, so again I'm going to exit. When I press enter, now you can see my message of the day right over here. You can see it. Okay, and enter your password. There we go. Cisco. Sorry, Cisco. There we go. Okay. Now that I'm inside, if I want to go inside the privilege exec mode, I can also give a password over there. I'm not sure whether you have tried these on your switches. So I press enable. Now they haven't given any password, so I don't need to give a password. But what we can do is, all we have to do is go up here in your configuration and type enable secret. Let's say my privilege exec mode, I give a password class. So usually in the lab, we only ask the students to play around with two passwords, either Cisco or class. Don't give anything else. The reason we do that is if somebody, let's say, has forgotten the password, we know that there are only two options, either um, class or Cisco. Okay, so when you're doing work with the real equipment, you have to be very careful with your passwords. Okay, otherwise we have to, getting rid of the password, is not so easy. We have to do a certain configurations. Okay, so enable secret class. So the password for my privilege exec mode is going to be class. Okay, so just type this and then exit. Exit there. So next time I enter, now this is the password for my user exec mode. So what was the password? Remember, Cisco. Now that I'm here, I want to type enable. Remember, I've given a password here as well. So when I type enable, again, it asks for password. So the password is class, C-L-A-S-S. Now I can go in. Okay. So these are some commands that perhaps you have to, be familiar with and get used to it. Now, having said that, my dear students, you don't need to actually give passwords every time to all your devices. You can practice it in your time, but when you're doing the lab exercise, please do not give passwords to your switch or to your routers unless it is asked. If in your exam we ask you to give a password, then you give a password. If we don't ask you, please do not just play around with that. Okay. So having said that, let's move on to something else. So these are some of the basic router configurations, and you can see that these basic router configurations are very similar to your switch. Okay. You can also, these are the commands that I typed, most of them, okay? And all these commands that you type on your router is saved to your routers and VRAM so that it is going to be used up. Now, the thing is, when you restart your router, whatever changes you have made will not be saved unless you do this step. Copy running configuration to startup configuration. Okay, I didn't do this. Let's go back here. Okay, so what I do is I just follow that command. Okay, copy running. There's a big mic in front of me, so typing is difficult. Config to startup config. Okay, so when I run this, it says destination file name. Destination file name is startup config. Okay, building configuration. That's it. Now my router, this router, my dear students, this router, every time I start it, okay, it's going to give me this message of the day. It's going to give me privilege exec mode password as well as your user exec mode password and so on. Okay, and the name of the router will be R1 because I have made my startup configuration, okay, my running configuration as my startup configuration. Okay, and again, this is something we discourage our students to do. Do not do this on the real equipment. Why? Because after you, there's another student who's to come and to use the router or the switch. Okay, so what they do is when they switch on the router, the settings is already done. They don't have to do any work. Okay, so sometimes it is the lab technician's job, we have to go and check all the routers before giving to you. Make sure that The settings are different. The settings are not done. Otherwise, just imagine if we were back in the campus, you have a lab session at 8 a.m. The students come and they configure. And some students, what they do, they type copy running configuration to startup configuration. So whatever IP addresses they have given, IP version 4, IP version 6, is going to be stored. So when the 1 o'clock class comes and they take the same router, now this student, he doesn't have to do any work because it's already set. Okay? And then they'll say, I finished already. Huh? How come you just connected the router? How come you're finished already? The IP addresses were already given. Okay. So please don't do this in the lab, in the actual lab. You can practice it. And when you're in your professional network related job, you can do this when you're a network administrator, perhaps someday. But when you're using the real equipment, you have to be perhaps extra careful. Consider other people who are going to use. Okay. Make sure that you don't give them the opportunity to learn. Okay. So let's move on. How to configure an interface in your router. Okay. So configuring an interface is very simple. Just mention the interface name. Okay. Mention your interface name. Once you have mentioned your interface name, then you can give a description about that interface and then give your IP address. IP address means IP address version 4. And then you can also give IP version 6 address. After that, just type no shut, okay, to activate it without restarting the router. Just say no shut. That will activate the interface. And then you're up and running. Very simple. Just like your switch, my dear students. Okay, no difference. Now, look at this. Okay, command to configure interface. Now, look at this topology. On the surface of it, my dear students, when you look at this topology, what do you see? How many networks do you see? Anyone? GN says 2, Cassandra says 3. Mustafa says 3. Okay, 3 is the correct answer. Okay, look, look at the network address. Okay, 192.168.10.0/24. That means network portion is 24 bits, host portion is 8 bits. So this is the first network address. This is the second network address. This means network portion is 30 bits and host portion is only 2 bits. Remember the morning class? 2 bits means 2 to the power of 2 minus 2. So 2 to the power of 2, 4 minus 2, that means we can only have 2 hosts in this network. And we have only 2 hosts. One is called .225, the other one is called .226. And this is the third network, okay? 10.1.1.0. Okay, this is a class A network. But we are saying this class A network is also /24. That means the 24 bits are for the whole network and 8 bits are for the host. Okay. And we also have IP version 6 address. This is the network address, IP version 6. 64 bits for the network, 64 bits for the host. For this network, again, this is the IP address. For this network, again, this is the IP address. Okay. So this is how actually you can play around. Let's simulate this, my dear students. Let's go around and actually go to packet tracer. Close this, go to packet tracer. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this. I don't want this anymore. This is a contaminated router. I mean, we've already used it. We get rid of it and we start fresh. Okay. So we take a new router because I don't want passwords and all that. I want it to be without passwords. So this is my R1. Okay. This will be my R1. And next, this will be my R2. Okay. Cancel. So let's just label. See, this is your router. It's switched on. Display name. Okay, display name R1. Host also lazy to type. Just make it R1. Okay. While it's booting. So we do the same thing for this configuration. Display name R2. Host name also should be R2. So when you type this, you know, it's easier because you don't have to give the command host name R2. So packet tracer makes things easier for us. So we have got our two routers. And then if you look, I have, let's just move this up here because I want the room down here. Okay. Now, next what I do is look at the topology, you have got a switch. Okay. I've got one switch here. Let's not name it because here they have not named the switch. And one more switch here. Okay. We're not going to create a VLAN on this on given IP address. Just leave it as default. Okay. And finally, we have got two PCs. So I just use a default PC. Okay. Call it PC, as they say over there. What's it called? PC1. Okay. And the other PC is, they're using a notebook, but I just use a PC. It's okay. It's the same thing. So PC2. Okay. So you can try out these things, my dear students, in your spare time. You know, it's just like a game and it's interesting. It's a learning game. Okay. So connect all of them by using your straight through cable. So PC1 is connected by fast Ethernet to switch, let's say fast Ethernet 1. PC2 is the same thing, connected to fast Ethernet 1. Okay. If you see I have made any mistakes, just quickly point out. Okay, because I'm, you know, going fast. So from here, gigabit Ethernet 1 to, let's say R1, gigabit Ethernet 00. Okay, so this also the same thing. Connect gigabit Ethernet 1 to 00. Okay, so this is the first network, a second network, and the third network is a connection between two routers. Okay, there is another network if you observe. This network is just not given the details. Okay, just a connection to the internet. Okay, so the fourth network we won't mention. We'll just concentrate on these three networks. Okay, so again, this one connect gigabit Ethernet 1 to gigabit Ethernet 1. Okay, so as you know that the connection to the switch straight away is green. So that means the connection is good. But the routers need to be configured. Okay, so before we do anything, let's just go and, you know, look at the IP addresses. Let me just quickly put it in my mind. What are the IP addresses? Yeah. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is just put a label over here for these IP addresses. Okay. So the PC1, for example, has got an IP address. what is the IP address? It's 192.168. Please pay attention while I do this so that you learn, okay? .10, dot 10, okay? That is the IP version 4 address. But if you observe, there is also a IP version 6 address, that is 2001, okay, DB8, first mention the network address, then ACAD, ACAD, then 10, and finally, the last one is 10, okay? So IP version 4 and IP version 6. So IP version 6, here is the network address, and here's the host, okay? So this is done. For the two switches, we are not giving any IP address, okay? Next, this PC2, what is the IP address? Let's just go and give a IP address for our PC2. For the PC2, the IP address is 10.1.1.10, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yes, okay. Sorry. Okay, so this is my IP address, and there is also IP version 6 address right over there. It's 2001, okay, DB8, CAFE 1, and over here as well, it is 10, okay. Later on, when we study IP version 6 address, we'll learn how we can shorten this address, okay, how we can make it short. So yeah, so the reason I'm writing these addresses is because later on when I give address to it, it would be easier. Perhaps you can do something like this in your exam as well, okay? Now, this interface over here, where you have got this network, okay? Which network is this? 192.168.10.0 network, this network, okay? So this is going to be the gateway to get out, okay? So this one also is going to have an IP address. So let's give an IP address over here, okay? So what would be the IP address for this? Let's just type the IP address for that would be 209.165.200.224. Sorry, not 224. That's the network address. The IP address is 225. Okay. So 225 will be the first IP address. Okay. So what will be the IP version 6 address? 2001 DB8 FEED. If I make a mistake, please point it out. Okay. 224 and 1. Okay. I'm sorry, I make a mistake. I made a mistake. We are giving IP address to this one, not this one. I thought we are giving IP address to this. My bad, my dear students. I'm sorry. My mistake. Okay. So, sorry. It's been a long day. Hold on. Wait a second. Yes, Cassandra, it doesn't matter actually, because they have got that feature that it will auto-negotiate. Okay, so by mistake, I was giving the IP address here, but remember I should give the IP address to this place. Okay, so this one is going to be in the same network, which is 192.168.10.1. Okay, so this is the one we're giving the IP address. Okay, so what about our version 6 IP address? Version 6 is going to be the same thing, 2001, because the same network, 2001, okay, DB8, ACAD, 10, and 1. Okay, so IP version 4, IP version 6 for gigabit 0, 0. Okay, there. So you can actually take it. Correct. Just take it and put it up here. Okay, take it and put it up here. Okay, make things easier. Okay, let me just address a few questions that our students have. Extra 10 there, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, this is your network portion, and this one, the last 10, is your host portion. You see, actually, there are some fields missing. It's okay. Some fields, when there are multiple zeros, you can just leave it empty. Yeah, you can. Yes, exactly. We will study this in more detail after perhaps your week free. Okay, so you will understand IP version 6 can be actually written in a short form, makes things easier. Okay, if I make any mistake, just let me know, because giving, and I haven't started configuring yet. I'm just giving IP addresses. So this is the first network I have given the IP address. Okay. Now let's give to this network router to router connection. Okay. And we know that this network, look over here. This network is 209.165.200.224/30. Slash 30 over here. That means 30 30 is your network portion of the address, and the host portion is only 2 bits. So what we are saying over here is something like this. Okay, I did this in the morning, but I'll do it again with you so you understand it better. We say that the subnet mask for this /30, the subnet mask means it is 255.255.255. Now the last one is not going to be 0 because it's not 24, it's 30. So what we are saying is this will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so we got our 24 network bits, but it's going to be 30. So you have to borrow 6 bits from the host portion. So over here it will be 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. What is the How many bits in IP version 4? 32. 32 minus 30 is 2. So the host bits is only 2, 0, 0. That is why how many computers you can connect to these, sorry, wrong notation. It shouldn't be computers. How many devices you can connect to this network? 2 to the power of 2 minus 2, because you see, host bits is only 2. Host bits count the 0. Network bits count the 1. Okay? So 2 to the power of 2 minus 2 is equal to 2. Only 2 devices can be connected. So the network address is 209.165.200.224. The first IP address is 209.165.200.225. The second IP address is 209.165.200.226. Okay? The third IP address, there's no such thing as a third IP address. Only 2 can be given. We have another one, which is the broadcast address. Broadcast address is the last IP address plus 1. 209.165.200.227 is your broadcast address. Okay, so anyway, now the subnet mask for this is going to be 255.255.255. So what is this? 1111110 converted into decimal. What will it be? Anyone? Yes, it's going to be, yes, Cassandra, it's going to be 252. So the subnet mask, you can either write it like this, or you can write it like this in the exam, okay? But when you're configuring your routers, you have to write like this. It won't accept this, okay? So let's go and configure our second network. Our second network IP address, again, give the IP address. Yeah, this section IP address, let's start here. So the IP address for that is 209.165.200.224. Okay. That is the network address. 224 is the network address. So the first IP address should be 225. Correct? What is the IP version 6 address? IP version 6 address for this section, which is Gigabit Ethernet 1, is going to be 2001 DB8, and then is FEED, and then is 224, and then is 1. Okay, you see IP version 6 address is very straightforward. Okay, let's just put a space between them. Yeah. Now that you have given your IP version 6 address, okay, let me just move it up here. Now let's give an address to this place. Okay, so this Gigabit Ethernet 1 and connected to router 2's Gigabit Ethernet 1. So let's just give an address for that as well. Okay, which is again 209.165.200. If I make a mistake, please let me know. Dot 226, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, 226. So that's the IP4 address. What is the IP version 6 address? It's 2001 DB8. Okay. FEED 224 and 2, correct? Yes, 2. Okay, so let's just move this also up here. Okay, so next is, we have finished with the first network. This network is 192.168.10.0 network. This network is 209.165.200.224 network. And this network is 10.1.10.1.1.0 network. Okay, so first, let's give an IP address to our 00 section. Okay, so again, when you do your skill-based exam, you can do something like this so that you don't get confused. Everything is straightforward. Okay, so the IP address for this will be 10.1.1.1. Okay, very straightforward. Usually, my dear students, the gateway address, the network entrance and exit from the router, we reserve the 1 for that, usually. Okay, that's why even here you see I've given 10.1. Even if you see the IP version 6, 10.1. Okay, so the first IP address, we reserve it. Over here, it doesn't matter. There are only 2 IP addresses. The only options you have is 225 or 226. But in IP version 6, there's no such thing. Okay, you can have 1 and 2. So IP version 4, we have to follow the decorum and the design. So the same goes for our, let's give address to our IP version 6. IP version 6 address would be just like this. Okay, but instead of 10, we will give 1. Okay, so it will be 2001 DB8 CAFE. Remember, hexadecimal values. 1 and 1. Okay. We can move this a bit up. So I have done the labeling. My next step is going to be the actual configuration. Okay. So I'm going to start with my PCs. Okay, go to the desktop. Go to my IP configuration and that PC1. This is my PC1. 192.168.10.10. Okay, subnet mask is automatically given. This is done. Now I do the same thing with my PC2. Okay, go to the desktop IP configuration. 10.1.1.10. Remember, this is a class A address. So if you go, the subnet mask will be 255.0.00. So the subnet mask will think that your network portion is only 8 and your host portion is 24 because of the IP address you're giving. You have to correct your subnet mask. You have to say, hey, no, this is, if you look at the diagram, here, it says /24. Network portion is 24. Okay, so the subnet mask is going to be 255.255.255.0. Okay, done. Now you close it. There. So we have given IP address for this. We have given IP address for this. Okay. We have not given IP version 6 address. So let's go ahead and give an IP version 6 address as well. So IP version 6 address is 2001 DB8 ACAD 10 10/64. Just mention that. Okay. So if you observe, there is another special address over here, link local address. Okay, we'll study this when we do our IP version 6. Okay, so you get an idea. Okay. Yeah, GN says, do we need to configure IP version 6 address? Yes, depends on you. If you don't configure, only your IP version 4 will work. If you configure, then your both IP version 6 and IP version 4 will work, both. Okay, so this is done. Okay, give the IP version 6 address for this as well. It's 2001 DB8 CFE 110/64. Okay, standard addresses. 64 bits is for the network, 64 bits for the host. Okay, so there, done. So we have given IP addresses. Now, the switches over here, according to this topology, if you look, the switches, we don't give any IP address. So no VLANs, nothing. We just use them as a connecting device. But you can see that the network up here is okay. But when it comes to your router, we haven't given IP address yet. So let's go to the router and start giving an IP address. Okay, so I go to the command line interface. Here's my command line interface. Okay, we are giving an IP address to this router, R1. Okay, let's just, sorry. There we go, R1. Okay, and you know, it's much more easier to give an IP address because you know you have labeled it. So now everything is going to be a breeze. Enable conf t. Okay, so now that we are here, what is the interface that we are giving IP address? If you look, this interface is gigabit 000. So we say interface G000. Okay, there we go. We are inside. Now you can give a description if you want. So description for this, I am going to say this, in order to remove the confusion, I say that description is this network is, let's say, 192.168.10.0. I give the network address. Okay, it's just like a comment entry. This network is 192.168.10.0. Okay, that's my description. Next, I give my IP version 4 address. IP address 192, you see, right over here. 192.168.10.1. Okay, remember this is the gateway inside and outside the network. So the gateway, we give always the first IP address, usually. Okay, it's not a must. It's more of something which all network engineers do. Okay, so 10.1 and then subnet mask 255.255.255.0. Okay, so once I'm done with that, now usually you type here no shut, but I'm going to go ahead and give the IP version 6 address as well. Okay, IP version 6 address. Remember, there is an IP version 6 address over here as well. So just give the address. Okay, so here, just give 2001. Just follow the label. DB8 ACAD 10. Okay, here's the IP address. Okay, /64. Done. Now that you have given the IP address, then no shut. Okay. Okay, exit. Okay, show IP interface brief. There. Gigabit 000, if you look, okay, it is 192.168.10.1 and it's up and running. Okay. And now you can see over here, can you see it's become green? Before it was red. Now it has become green. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to manually set up this other section. That means gigabit 001 section. We're going to give a IP address to 001 as well. So let's go ahead and do the same thing. Okay. So configure terminal. Okay. Interface gigabit 0 0 1. Okay. There we go. We are now in the one interface. Okay. So the description, I write here, description, I say this network is, what is the IP address? I give the IP version 4 address. This network is 209.165.200.224 network. No, it's a network. Just type this network is 209. Okay, that's my description. And then I proceed with the IP address. IP, here, this one, this IP address. Okay, IP version 4 address is 209.165.200.225. Okay, and my subnet mask is 255.255.255.252. Okay, if you remember, if we go here, see, the subnet mask for this is 255.255.255.252. Okay, so just mention that. Okay, next, I'm going to go ahead and give my IP version 6 address as well. Okay, my IP version 6 for Gigabit Ethernet 1 connection of the router is this one. Okay, so I say IP version 6 address is 2001. Remove the mouse, yeah. DB8 FEED 2241. Okay, and don't forget /64. Done? No, shut. Okay, exit, exit. Show IP interface brief. There, you can see the second network. The second interface is also up and running. Okay, there. Second network is also up and running. So now we have configured this router. Now let's go and configure this router. Okay, because this router has got two gateways. One is this and one is this, just like this. One is this and one is this. First, we are going to configure the interface G000. Okay, so that this network will be up. Okay, let's go around and do that. Close this, open this router. Okay, go to the command line interface. Okay, so remember we are doing this now. Okay, so it's red, so you can see it better. So we are going to configure this. Enable conf t. Okay, So interface G0, 0, 0. Okay, router 2 is G0, 0, 0. Okay, there we go. So description is not always important. You know, you can type it if you want. So which network is this? You can say this is 10.1.1.0 network. Okay. Oh, I type the same thing that I type in the other ones. This network is, so in the future, as a network administrator, you can go back and have a look, and the description will help you because you tend to forget what you had done. Okay, it's like a comment entry. And then give IP address. IP address 4 first. IP address 10. Yeah, it's 10.1.1.1. Okay. Subnet mask is 255.255.255.0. Okay. And I'm going to proceed and give the IP version 6 address as well. Okay. IP version 6 address 2001 DB8 CAFE 1 1. Okay, /64. No, shut. The moment I press enter, look what happens over here. This is supposed to be green. Okay, look over here. The moment I press enter, there, you see, it automatically changes to green. And now this network is up and running. Which network is this? 10.1.1.0 network is up and running. Okay. Okay, so show IP interface brief. You can see the network interface is up and running. Now all I have to do is give an IP address for this. Remember, we have already given IP address for gigabit 1. Now we have to give router 2's gigabit 1. Okay, the moment I give an address for this, so this also will be up and running. Okay. So let's go and do the same for that. Okay. So again, conf t interface of router 2 is now G001. Okay. So we are in that interface. Now the description for this is network 209.165.200.224. This is the description. Okay, have I got it right? Yes. Okay, that's why if you have a label up there, things that can become very easy. Now that you have given this description, now we give the IP address. IP address 4 first. IP address 209.165.200.226. Okay. Subnet mask 255.255.255.252. Okay, this is done. Next, I give IP version 6 address. It's right over here. IP version 6 address. IP version 6 address, okay, is 2001 DB8 FEED 224 2. Okay, because previous one we gave 1 this interface, so this one will be 264. Okay, yeah, 64. No, shut. The moment I press enter, you see Both of these is supposed to be green, okay, if we haven't done any mistake. There, you see, it's up and running. Now your network is up and running. Okay, so exit, exit, show IP interface brief. There, everything is manually up. Okay, now let's try out all our pings. So from this interface, okay, I'm going to ping. Let's ping myself first. Okay, ping 209.165.200.226. Okay, 100%. Now I'm going to ping 225. Okay, 80%. Ping again to get 100%. Okay, up and running, no issues. Now let's go and try out the same thing on our there PC1. Okay, we have given all the IP addresses, right? So we go to command prompt. Okay, and in command prompt, what I do is there PC1, I'm going to ping myself, ping 192.168 to double check my TCP IP, everything is okay. Yes, I can ping myself, no worries, everything is okay. So, okay. Now I'm going to ping myself again, but this time I'm going to use my IP version 6 address, which was 2001 DB8 ACAD 10 10. Yeah, perfect. No worries. Works very good. Now I'm going to ping from here, from PC1 to this node, okay, the router gateway. I'm going to ping to 192.168.10.1. Okay, so 10.1. Yes, perfect. I can ping from here because you're still within the network, no problems. Do the same thing for your IP version 6. Correct? Yeah. Ping. Works like a charm. No worries. Okay. Now, my question to you is, my dear students, if I want to ping from here to here, 209 to this interface, Gigabit Ethernet 1 of the router, the second interface, 209.165.200.225. So if I ping, okay, if I ping from this PC, from this PC, I can ping within the network, no problem. But now I'm trying to ping to the other section, which is ping 209.165.200.225. Okay, I'm pinging here. IP version 4, ping. Now my question to you is, will this work? Will I get a reply? GN says yes. Anybody who says no? Once again, what I'm doing is, from this PC, I'm pinging the other side of the router, which is this connection, 209.165.200.225. Okay? So can I ping it? GN says yes. So I assume all the 32 students also say yes. Okay, we have got one student. Okay. Gan, Tingyu, and Mustafa, they say no. Ian says yes. Okay. Anyone else who says yes or no? Kajing says no. Anyone else? So we got team yes and team no. Now let's try it out and see what happens. So I press enter. Problem, right? Ahmad says yes. There, you see, we cannot ping. I repeat, what I try to do is I try to ping from this PC to this, just this interface. I could ping from here to here, no problem. But the moment I'm trying to ping here, it says cannot. Now, my question to you is why? Anyone? I'm so glad you did not watch the previous semester's videos. Otherwise, you could have answered this question. So I can, have fun with all of you. Anyone? Just say whatever comes to your mind. I mean, whatever you think is correct. You may be right. Why I cannot ping from here to the other interface of the router? The network is up and running. Why I cannot? GN, yes, it's outside network. Very good. Now, Abdul Razak has hit the jackpot. Okay, because the gateway is for R2. Okay, you are almost close, Abdul Razak. The answer is because you have not mentioned the gateway. In order for PC1 to get out of the network, it has to be going out through this gateway. You have not mentioned that gateway. Okay, what do I mean is, look at your PC1. Okay, let's go to our desktop. Let's go to IP configuration. Look at IP version 4 address for PC1. Very good. Subnet mask is very good. But what is the default gateway you have not mentioned? You have to mention your default gateway. So what is the default gateway? You have to mention the default gateway. The default gateway is 192.168.10.1. Sorry, .10.1. Once you mention that your default gateway for this PC is here, now it can exit. No problem. Okay, let's try again. Go to close this. Go to your command prompt. Okay. So I'm going to do the same ping again. Okay, same ping which did not work earlier. Now I'm going to ping. There. Reply, reply, reply. Works like a charm. Okay. Now let's ping again from PCA. Okay, we pinged here. We pinged our IP version 6 address. It worked very well. Okay, there, within the network. Okay, it worked well. Now, again, the same question. Can I ping the IP version 6 at the second interface of the router, which is a different network, you see? So what is the IP address for that? It is DB8 FEED 224.1. Will this work? Anyone? I'm doing the same thing, but now IP version 6. So again, we have GN saying, yes, it will work. Okay. I'm doing the same thing, my dear students, you see? But instead of IP version 4, I'm using IP version 6 to ping. Here can ping, no worries. But I'm trying to ping to this one. Okay, Mustafa says yes. Anyone who says no? So I assume all 32 students say yes. Okay, let's try. Yes, GN says, wait, did you set the default gateway for IP version 6? No, GN, I did not. Is your answer still yes? Yes, very good. GN has now changed his answer. It says it will not work. You're right. It will not work. It will not work. Why? Because I have not given my gateways IP address 6, IP version 6 address. I only gave the IP version 4 address, correct? So you have to go back and set your IP version 6 address. Okay, there. You see, you cannot. So what we do again, we close this, we go to our IP configuration. There, IP version 6. There, default gateway is not given. So give the default gateway address, which will be this. This is the default gateway to go out. Okay, so give the address 2001 DB8 ACAD 10 1. Okay, you have to get used to your IP version 6 addresses. Make sure you don't make any mistake. Okay, once you've given this, now go to your command prompt and try it out again. Okay, try it out again. You see, I am trying to do a IP version 6 ping from this PC to the other section of the router, to this network, which is here. So now it will work like a charm because I have given my default gateway address. Get it? Ian, what do you mean? How should we write our default gateway? Your default gateway is the router connection where you come inside the network or go outside. For this network, okay, the default gateway is here. For this network, the default gateway, okay, in this case, can be this, also this. For this network, the default gateway is this, okay? So in situations like this, you have to be very careful by giving the default gateway for your PCs, okay? So you learn a good lesson. Yes, very good question. Okay, Ian says, should one network have one gateway? Yes. Okay, one network can have one gateway, except in this situation, look at these two routers. Okay, where both the connection is a router. Can you see that? Okay, so perhaps in this situation, the gateway will be the connection itself. Okay. So in this situation, when you're connecting routers to routers, be it using our crossover cable or straight through cable or using a serial cable like this, you see, a DTE serial, a DCE serial cable. If you're using these kinds of cables, then over here, your default gateway would be perhaps that IP address itself. Okay. The routers, no. The routers, you don't need to set that because a router itself can communicate. So this one can communicate with this one. That is the beauty of routers. This IP address can communicate with this IP address. Okay. So this morning we studied ARP. Okay, so there is a table, IP version 4 table, which shows what is the IP address and corresponding to the MAC address. So the router will have that information, and it will have the IP address of all the neighboring routers so that it can forward your packet. And that's how your internet works. Router to router to router communication. Yeah, between these two, you don't need to set anything. Okay, just the IP address. That's it. Okay, you don't need to give a default gateway for this, because for this, the default gateway to go to 192.168.10.0 network, it would be this. And for this to go to 10.1.1.0 would be this. So no need to give a gateway for this network because it's a router to router connection. Can you see that? Yeah. Okay. So now again, we can ping from here to these until here. But again, this one can only ping within this. Why? Because if I go here and I look at my IP configuration, you see, I have not given a default gateway. What will be the default gateway? It will be 10.1.1.1. What will be the IP version 6 default gateway? It will be 2001 DB8 CAFE 1 1. Get it? So you learn a very nice, skill. When you bring routers to the equation, the settings become more complicated. Okay. Now let's go back to our session. So there are certain commands which I have run and you saw, like show IP interface brief and show IP version 6 interface brief, to give you details of the changes that you have made to your IP interfaces. Okay. So these are some commands that, you as a network engineer, you should remember this. Show IP interface brief, show IP version 6 interface brief, and show IP route, show IP version 6 route, show interfaces, show IP interfaces. Okay. Show interfaces displays statistics for all the interfaces on the device, but only IP version 4 addresses. Okay. That is those information. Show IP interfaces displays the IP version 4 statistics for all the interfaces on the router. Now change it to IP version 6. Now it shows you IP version 6 statistics. Okay. They have run this command. There you go. Show IP interface brief. Show IP version 6 interface brief. I just ran it. Show IP route, which we have seen. It shows you your route from one router. Where does it go? Okay, we have done this. What does C stand for? What does L stand for? And so on. Same goes for IP version 6. Okay, show IP version 6 route. You also have show interfaces. Shows you all the statistics and all the interfaces. You also have show IP interface. Will show you interface related to IP version 4. Same, show IP version 6 interface related to IP version 6. Okay, so try out these commands and remember them, especially if you are setting up yourself to be a network engineer. Then these commands are part of part of your vocabulary to communicate with the router. So we have already covered this, configuring the default gateway. Okay, it's very important. If PC4 wants to communicate with PC1, PC4 should mention its default gateway. So which one is the default gateway for PC4? Anyone? Type the IP version 4 address, please. Anyone? Try it. PC4 wants to ping PC1. GN says 192.168.11.1. Yes, this interface. Very good, GN, you're right. So this one is the default gateway. The same goes for PC10. If it wants to ping PC4, its default gateway should be 192.168.10.1. Okay? So that was demonstrated to you with that exercise. Okay? Last semester, I demonstrated this. I created this topology. So in order to, perhaps learn more, you can go and have a look at the previous videos that I have. Click the link on Moodle and have a look at it. Now over here, my dear students, if you observe, I have not configured the switch. I have not given a VLAN IP address. By default, the VLAN 1 is always there. I just used it as a connecting device. But if you have a VLAN and you have an IP address, then you have to type use IP default gateway. For example, here, if you have a VLAN address with an IP address, here you have to type IP default gateway is 192.168.10.1. Then only you can ping. Okay, so this is an important step that you have to remember. If you're using a switch with active VLANs, okay, with an IP address and so on. Remember this for your next week's, next week is a week free, the week after that, lab. This brings us to the end of today's session. Anyone has any question? Okay, very good. I'll be uploading this video. You can have a look at it later. So anyway, there's a question by GN. You didn't set default gateway for switch. Why can't ping? I told you just now, because the switch, I have not set any VLAN. I didn't do any configuration on it. I didn't give any IP address. So it can ping. Okay. But if I had set a VLAN, in those situations, then I have to type IP default gateway and type this address 192.168.10.1. Yeah, this is something that you'll be doing in your future lab. Okay, welcome. Now, what we do, let me stop this recording.